I'm Jennifer.
Hi, I'm Mike, and welcome aboard to our brand new podcast called Taking Off with Mike and Jen.
In this podcast, we will be diving in and unpacking all the baggage. Anything from communication to finances, family dynamics, expectations, and what it looks like to fight or flight.
We have 32 years of marriage and a lot of Christian counseling under our belts. So no matter where you find yourself, whether that's being single, dating, engaged, or married, this podcast is just for you.
Are you ready to take your relationships to new heights?
If so, sit back, relax. We have been cleared for takeoff. Well, ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to Taking Off with Mike and Jen. This is another great flight that we have been looking forward to taking with some of our best friends. Brian and Amy Bloye are joining us today from first class seat 1A and 1B. Here's the great news. They brought all their baggage with them, and we're going to hopefully unpack as much as we can. We're going to try to not make this the most turbulent flight ever, but we may get into a little bit, so enjoy the ride. So for now, we're going to toss it over to Brian and Amy to introduce themselves so that you can get to know who they are just a little bit before we dig into some questions.
Yeah, I'm Brian Bloye. We've known each other for, 27 years almost. I'm the founder and senior pastor of Westridge Church, and that's how we met each other. And
Day one.
Yeah, and we've been hanging out and having good times for 27 years.
Yeah.
And what's your name?
Amy.
We both have kids, same ages. That was part of the connection with showing up at Westridge Church for the very first day. The very first time they opened their doors on a Sunday, we were there. Happenstance, long story there, but then our kids grew up together, went to school together, and it's just been a very fun adventure for the last 27 years. Mm-hmm. Very, very fun. Been through a lot, which we'll get into. But
We will.
Well, we're going to get into...
We haven't been through a lot. We're good, everybody.
We've been through a lot together because our families have been
Yes,
together is my
sure.
point.
We've lived a lot of life together.
Yes.
Exactly.
We've done a lot of life, for sure.
Uh-huh.
They're the family. What is it? What's that saying? They're the family that you choose, friends that choose your family.
Oh, boy.
Is that right? Is that it?
I'm not going to get into this.
We are not going to get...
Oh, man.
So if you're joining us for the very first
Thank you,
time
Jen.
or not, there are things that are called Jenniferisms.
Gosh.
And one day we'll read some of the Jenniferisms, but you just got to hear it right there.
When
One
I
of her
die,
Jenniferisms.
and then you guys can all laugh.
Oh, yeah.
I
It's
want
fun.
it to be a party.
So let's just shoot from the hip here and tell us about, part of your family, like your siblings, where you grew up. Were your mom and dad married the whole time that you were growing up? What's that story? Tell us that story about this is a relationship podcast. So this is what and how you guys have been defined is what you grew up in, right?
Yep.
Who your brothers and sisters were, who your mom and dad, what you experienced. Tell us a little bit about that.
I'm going to let Amy go first.
Go, Amy,
All
go.
right.
Yeah.
We'll talk about Max and Nancy a little bit. Gosh. My parents, I grew up in a Christian home. My mom and dad were, I would say most of the time they were in ministry. My dad was like a business guy and then went into ministry. And I'm the oldest, so I have two younger sisters and I have a younger brother who I'm almost 11 years older than my brother.
Are you really?
So there's a big gap there. And just like this kind of quote, perfect Christian home, you know what I mean? I felt very loved growing up and I love my parents. Like I talk to them most every day, even now. And I'm grateful for that. It's not perfect. The older I get, the more I realize, oh my gosh, we had issues, but I never thought I did growing up. And I'm just thankful they taught us about Jesus, loved us big. We had a lot of rules. We'll probably talk about that in a bit, but Max and Nancy are just treasures.
John and Judy.
John.
No, listen, my parents got married when they were young. I think my mom was 17. My dad was 19. They had me a year later. I grew up in Detroit. And then, like Amy, later on, my dad got into ministry, but I grew up in this home for the first several years. It was like a war zone, honestly. My mom grew up independent Baptist. My dad grew up Lutheran, which really meant nothing. And, they got married really young, had me really young. So it was like kids raising a kid, and a lot of fighting. I just have a lot of memories of a lot of fighting and ashtrays being flown and through the air, and a lot of cussing. And I mean, maybe not so much my mom, but it was just, my dad drank, my mom left. I mean, it was just one of those deals when they fought, they would just leave. And so it was just a crazy, my early days of growing up. I grew up in a really fun family, but up until the point my dad got saved in 76, it was like a war zone. And honestly, my parents were getting divorced in 76, and dad got saved, trusted Christ. They were in counseling, and then literally things just changed. And for the next 4 years, my dad he owned a business. He owned a flower shop. I grew up in a flower shop family. There was like 4 or 5 of them in my family at one time. And so I grew up in this, typical Midwest house. Everybody on the block had the same exact house almost. And so it's like me growing up is like it's like a tale of two tales. One was before my dad got saved, the other one was after, and then my dad got into ministry, and so we moved to Texas, and then my dad was a church planner. So when Amy and I met each other, it was like, oh my gosh, we have the same exact stories. Mm-hmm. Not realizing that we grew up in very different homes, because she grew up in a house with a lot of rules. I grew up in a home where there were no rules. And so
but both of our dads
were in ministry.
Yeah, went to school, like seminary or college, to get degrees and be in ministry. And we were all dirt poor because of that.
Yeah.
And we have a lot of similar stories of seeing God come through for us when we didn't have anything, and God would come through. And we moved 16 times by the time I was 18.
Holy smokes.
It's crazy.
Yeah. So, I mean, very similar church backgrounds, very similar ministry story backgrounds, but very different upbringings.
Do you have siblings, Brian?
Yeah, I do. I've got a brother named Kevin who's 4 years younger than me, and then I have a brother who is 25 years younger than me. My parents adopted a little boy when he was eight days old. Okay. So, yeah, it's an interesting journey. So, and as most people know, my dad died very tragically in 2004 in a rafting accident. So, yeah, it's been a journey. For sure.
So the people who have been listening to our podcast so far know our backgrounds, know our stories, and something that has been, I think, fun, interesting, enlightening, education has been there, is that our friendship has been similar in the sense of, if I'm looking here, it's like an X. It's like a Brian and Jennifer type of growing up situation family, I feel like, and then more Amy and I are paralleled in the sense of, if we use the airplane analogy, I'm coming on board with a backpack on, and I'm like, okay, here's my trash. And these two have checked, 10 bags at the front counter of baggage. But yet, the longer and longer I'm alive, and the more I look backwards and the more I see, I'm like, holy crap, I had baggage I forgot at the house. Mm-hmm. There's a whole bunch of it here. I didn't know it. Mm-hmm. And that's the glory of marriage when you're on the right track, is then you realize, holy smokes, this woman has brought out the fact that, okay, I forgot my baggage. I forgot it was there. I didn't know it was there. It absolutely was there. And so the refining that's taken place through our marriage has been awesome, painful, exciting, all the adjectives that you can use. And that's probably why there's a bond, I think, in a relationship too, is really understanding. And I'm watching that play out over 27 years. Mm-hmm. Right. And it never ceases to bring out more. Like in my family, that it's the gift that keeps giving. Mm-hmm. and it's just the difference of families is because there's a suppression or a flight. And then the other way, there's a fight. Throw it all out there, suppress it. Oh, there's another piece. There's another piece. It is what it is. Mm-hmm. I mean, we're born to the families that we have. We know that they love us, but we also know that they were raised from their parents. Yep. And so the cyclical pattern that happens is every single family out there. Every single family has that cyclical pattern. A lot of people don't like to throw their families under the bus. Mm-hmm. Yeah. And this isn't throwing families under the bus. It's just realizing we're all human. we can talk about the negative things in our families and we still love them. We're trying to grow from them. And that's where a lot of people are the suppressive type things. And that's what we're trying to get away from with this podcast is just open it, put it in the light, let God heal it, let it be known.
Exactly.
Doesn't mean I don't love you. It just means, you know what? I'm giving you the grace that you deserve and need because you did the best you could.
Yep.
It's just, that's the way it was.
And when you look at yourself as parents, and we all have adult kids, you realize, oh my gosh, I'm passing stuff along to my kids.
For sure.
And I've done the best I can do.
Right.
And you just give your kids freedom to say, hey, we're not perfect. We've done the best that we can do. We're going to help you guys get into counseling.
Right.
Exactly.
We told Taylor and Zach we'll pay for the 2 C's, college and counseling.
Exactly.
And,
Exactly.
So.
And
I think
they
it
are
makes
going to
you
have
love
the same
more.
challenge. When they have kids, when our kids have kids,
Yep.
they then will realize, oh my gosh, Mike and Jen really messed us up. We've got to fix this. And that's okay.
Yeah. The intention obviously wasn't bad.
No, not at all.
Yeah, you do the best you can do with what you have. So.
And it's not, and that's the thing too, is we have gone to plenty of Christian counseling to try to, one, identify where those issues are, and then 2, make the change as we go. And hopefully that has happened.
You guys have been so great at that.
Well,
helped a lot of people.
That's what's kept us afloat.
It's been expensive, and it's been
Yes,
like,
a lot of
holding
money.
your breath underwater. It
Yeah.
starts to get painful after a while, but the
You have to go
goal
through it.
the goal is to help others. If we look at how our marriage started, and if you've listened to this podcast, you know the drama that we've had and the things that we've gone through. But then when we look up and we say, Lord, help us with this, give us the direction that we need so we can have a fantastic marriage, we make those changes. And then for those of you out there with relationships, here's what not to do. This is what we did. Here's what not to do. Do you want to stub your toe? Do you want to go down that road where there's a lot of potholes? Or let us direct you down the smooth road. And that's the whole goal. And that's why we bring people in like this, is to say, what were your potholes? What were your stub toes? And it doesn't matter if you're in ministry or you're not in ministry or what your
You're
thing
human,
is.
like the rest of us.
We all are alike. God made us the way we are, and we all had parents, and we all had things that we did incorrectly, wrong, and there's things that were done wrong to us. We didn't ask for it, but it happened.
Yep.
And so that's what we want to get into. All right, go, babe.
Okay. So, and each of you can answer different times or together. So were your mom and dad a good example of marriage in their relationship? So that's one, and then there's kind of a 2-part. And are your views a little bit different now that you've grown up, you've been married on your own, you're out of the house, than when it was when you were growing up, of how you saw your parents and their marriage, and then how you
Versus
see
today.
it now?
Yeah. I'll go first on this one. Like, as I said earlier, my mom and dad, they fought a lot early on. And then, when my dad got saved, it was a very different environment. But I would say that there were a lot of core issues that I don't know ever really got resolved. And so I think my parents came from a generation, like probably all of our parents, where it's like there's a magic carpet you can sweep things under.
Yeah.
And so I think my mom and dad had a fun marriage. They did a lot of fun things together. Obviously, adopting a kid, who's 8 days old creates a lot of unique drama that they had. But I think there were things as we have gotten older, both of us, we look at our parents and we go, oh, this was not perfect, and mine was more glaring. And so I think watching them, it has helped us probably to be more open and honest and go, this is just not going to just magically go away. And so, my dad died when he was 58. They were getting ready to celebrate 40 years together. So, if you knew the whole journey that they had been on, it was miraculous that they had been married for almost 40 years. I mean, they really, there's a lot of divorce in my family. There's a lot of sexual sin in my family. There's a lot of affairs in my family altogether. And so, they made a decision that they were not going to be a statistic. And, I had a conversation with my dad, about a month or 2 before he died. It was like a gift. And we got into the early years of their marriage and them fighting just constantly. I just, I looked at my dad and I could ask the same question to my mom, like, why did you stay in this? Because it was bad. And he just said, I just made a decision that there was no other man that was going to raise my kids. And it was like, wow. And my brother Kevin and I were sitting at the IHOP in Hiram with him, and we just start crying together. And then, a month later he dies. So it was a sweet gift. But I mean, I think, I just, my parents, they had a fun marriage. They loved adventure. But I think that there were a lot of things that they never quite were able to resolve with, they talked through a lot of things, but I think it was more of a let's sweep this under the carpet and keep moving on.
And as you got married young and then you observed that's when that came to light. Like you just could see that these were things, because now you're married and you're understanding the communication process that you need to have with Amy. You can now look at your parents and say, gosh, they really need to get through that, or they need to talk about that, or they need to, because we've brought this up before where you don't know what you don't know when you're just observing as a young person. You think, oh, my parents' marriage is great.
Yep.
And then when you get married and you go back at them and you say, gosh, that's jacked up. They should be talking about that, or they should be doing this. I mean, I thought my parents' marriage was great growing up.
Yeah,
then
well,
they get
never
divorced.
fought. They never fought.
Well, I
So
did.
you already knew that.
But I mean, post.
But even before we got married, I knew it was like I could see things and go,
Okay.
And so even going into our marriage, there's a lot of things about, like, we went into marriage thinking we're really similar, and then we get married and we're like, we're very different. And part of that is just, I grew up in a marriage or in a family where, people fought.
Yeah.
People talked very direct, very straightforward, very honest. And her experience was very different than that. And so, we really, we don't fight a lot. We've never really have fought a lot, but we even fight a little differently because that's how I grew up. I was like, and I think part of that is even, we'll talk about this later, but just even growing up in a northern home.
Yeah.
In a family that was very direct. I grew up with boys, not girls. So we communicate very differently. I mean, we found that out very early. But a lot of that was like just watching my parents. I mean, I knew that, they had a sweet marriage, but I could see that I always looked at my parents and go and said, you could have a better marriage. And, I would say that my dad, and you said this earlier, they did the best they could do with what they had.
Sure.
Right.
And I could go into unpacking my grandparents because I'm into genealogy and ancestry. And so I study generational stuff. And so I'm very, very knowledgeable about what they brought into marriage and why it was so jacked up. But, I just wish that they could have, had everything that God had for them.
Sure.
But again, it was just a generation that you don't typically really choose to dig deep and unpack all your junk.
No,
And
that's
so-
definitely a generational thing.
Yeah.
For sure.
And I think our generation is,
a little bit more
a
open.
little
we
bit more
all
so. And I
are.
would say
Let's all
the
talk about it.
generations younger than us are more so than that.
Exactly.
Yeah.
I agree.
So why don't you talk about your
Yeah.
family?
Yeah, so we're like opposite in that, I just grew up feeling like I had the perfect family. Everybody I knew wanted a family like mine. And my parents they're amazing. And they've raised 4 kids who love God and are leaders. And I'm very grateful for that. I think I was delusional for a long time that my family had any problem at all.
It took some counseling for us to.
We went to counseling about some things, and I was just like, yeah, this will be interesting because I don't feel like I have any problems. Like, I actually said that out loud. And then
I love
the first time we went, we were like 15 minutes into counseling, and we were both crying. I'm like, I'm not a crier.
No, she's
so
not.
this was crazy. I'm like, what are we unpacking here? So when I think when I began to look at mom and dad as like Max and Nancy and not mom and dad, and I could step back and I had my own marriage and my own kids, and I began to see them for people and not just the home that I grew up in. Of course, when you grow up in a home, that's all you know. Like,
Yes.
that is your experience. You know nothing else except like maybe what you watch from your neighbors or, some friend. And so I began to see that that my dad grew up in an abusive home. My mom grew up in an alcoholic home, which I can't even imagine I'm saying that. Like, my grandpa was the sweetest man that ever lived. And so I couldn't believe it. The first time I actually heard my mom say those words was on stage. We were interviewing her at Westridge. And I heard her say my dad was an alcoholic, and I about fell off the stool.
Wow.
Because I never knew that. And I certainly never heard her say that on stage. Things began to make sense for me. Wow. Like, why things were a little bit the way they were. And the way I can explain that is that, kind of like what you said, I think they just wanted to have the perfect family. They're like, we don't want that.
Sure.
You know, we are believers and we're following hard after God, and we're going to raise the perfect family. And we're going to put all of these very strict rules in place to help us do that, you know, and control lots of situations so that nothing goes off the rail here.
Makes sense.
Which is very much alcoholic. You know,
yes,
but
and
makes
even though
sense.
there wasn't alcoholism in my family, the mindset, like, unless you unpack all that and deal with it yourself, is going to continue to pass it on. And when I realized, oh my gosh, we have so much to unpack here, that has really impacted my marriage. And I didn't know that. I didn't know that till I was like in my 40s and didn't really deal with it probably until I was, I don't even want to say it, probably 50 years old. And now I'm just like, I'm just trying to go, God, let me see things, because I couldn't see it.
Sure.
This is Amy's.
It was a 5.5 hour counseling session.
It was, and I think
Amy's
because like you said, I don't want to throw my parents under the bus, because they're so amazing and they've done so great, and I love them so big. The truth is, when I could admit that they weren't perfect, I love them more. Like, I'm okay with it. It's fine to go, you know, you did some things that hurt me, and I'm dealing with it, and we're dealing with it together. And now I'm dealing with things for my kids and the way I'm raising them, but it's not their fault. They're amazing. Right. They're still amazing. And plug for my parents, I have to say, in their old age, I am watching them still try to be better and grow, and I love and admire that about both of them. But
and I'd say that about my mom too.
Yes,
my mom constantly is trying to get better.
And
as a
isn't
person.
that what we
It's
all
encouraging.
want? Right?
It is.
To
Some
believe
people
the
just
truth.
stay. They're just stuck.
Yes, and to go, let's look at the truth.
Right.
Let's believe it and be honest. And we don't have to. We can love people bigger because of it. We can have grace and love people bigger, and so I'm grateful for that. Just God kind of like pulling back the curtain just a little bit of what I could handle and saying, I see things weren't perfect. And we're willing to deal with it and love big and see what we can change about ourselves so we don't pass it on.
That's good.
When you go backwards in your thinking, if you look at those first 18 years, say, before you go off to college or do whatever you do, can you think of things specifically that, okay, I'm not going to do that with my kids? And so that you didn't do it with your kids. Even though you, Amy, say, grew up in what you thought, loving family, blah, blah, blah. Can you look backwards in the raising of your two boys and say, okay, I did do that differently. I thought I had a great deal or whatever, right? I mean, we always try to emphasize, just because so much of the audience thinks Christian home, perfect family. Wrong.
Sorry.
Completely wrong.
I'm sort of sick. Not really, but sort of. So I apologize, people out there.
You should have called in sick for this trip.
I know. I already have 2 points.
Okay. Anyway.
In real life.
No,
Sorry,
but
Jen.
so many people think, Christian family, you have it all together. Wrong, Ola. It's just, she has a nickname. I call her my Ferrari. And it's like you have this beautiful, wonderful, awesome, high power, fun, but there's maintenance involved. Doesn't mean she's not a Ferrari. That's I don't want a Ferrari. And it's just like a Christian family. It's maintenance. You need it. It's fine. It's defined as a Christian family. We put our hope and our trust in Jesus Christ. We're jacked up.
You just said you don't want a Ferrari.
I do want a Ferrari.
See.
You're my Ferrari.
It's going to have to edit.
You would have been long gone.
Golly.
You would have been long gone.
Golly.
Anyway.
So what's the question?
The question is, looking back and seeing your families, how did you raise your boys? differently based on that.
Yeah.
Because
You
this
wanna
is
go with that one?
this is typically, well, I'm not going to say because I'm throwing
Yeah.
my parents under the bus.
Sure.
But
Yeah.
that's just
Yeah.
they did their best. I
Right.
love
Like here,
them.
the
Yeah.
little example, and I've said this before, but just little example, as you guys know my story. So for me, I wanted my kids to never have a moment where they didn't feel just so much love it would make them vomit. So that was my I mean, lots of jobs, but that was my main one was my kids are going to feel loved, accepted, wanted, affirmed,
Not
empowered,
abandoned.
not abandoned, empowered, that they
Yes.
could do and be whatever with no one by their side except the Lord. So, because I didn't get that. So that's what I wanted. So one little example.
And you have done that with your kids.
Tried.
They know their love's so big. For me, I would say I wanted my kids not to worry about what everyone thinks, and that they were free. I even tattooed on my arm
Yes.
"free," because I just want them to be free to, I don't know, rest in what
Love that,
God's
Amy.
called them to do, and love people fully, but not look to people for acceptance or
Right.
not look to people for approval. And I remember Zach saying when he was little, "We don't care what people think, do we, Mom?" And I'm like, "Oh my gosh,
He's
I
sliding
think I've
down the
said that."
banister.
Yeah,
That's
he
good.
was sliding down the
Yeah.
banister. And I thought, oh, he's heard that from me. And so it made me think, okay, what do I mean by that? I had to kind of redefine that for myself. And that's when I decided that we love people big, but we don't have to look to them for approval.
That's
And that's what I wanted to impart to my kids.
That's great. And you have.
Yeah. The one thing about my parents, and I will say this, they were great parents. I mean, I mean, as far as the way they raised me, I mean, and I gave my dad the business. I mean, he was probably at times a little tough on me, and I probably deserved all of it. But to kind of go back to a little what I said a little while ago, I think one of the things that I just thought is we're just not going to fight, in front of our kids like I saw.
Right.
And to be honest with you, it probably hurt our kids because we probably should have fought a little bit more openly in front of them.
So they can see how to fight well.
Yeah. And I mean, there's the one side of this is we really don't fight a lot. We just don't. The other side of it is, when we didn't typically do it in front of them. And so when they would see a fight, they were like, "Oh my goodness, the sky's falling, the world's falling apart."
By
I'm
fight,
like,
we mean a little disagreement.
Right.
yeah. I mean, it was like,
Right.
"Oh, what's happening right now?" So I don't think that we really gave them a healthy view in some ways of what that looks like. And I think partly because I just I wanted my kids to see something different, and it was probably maybe a little bit of an overreaction, but at the same time, there wasn't just like tons of stuff that we've thrown down over. I mean, we've certainly had fights, but the worst of our fights have never been in front of them.
Right.
And so, and I just don't think that was probably the healthiest thing for us to do. And I'm just watching how that plays out in their own marriages, and they're great guys and they're great husbands,
yes.
but I think we probably hurt them a little bit that way. So, but that was a
Isn't
decision.
it interesting how in life, and it's not even marriages, friendships, it's just life. You see this, you decide, we're not going to do that with our own. So you go to the other side of the spectrum, but in the
Yes.
moment, you don't feel like you're going to that other side of the spectrum.
You're
You,
swinging.
you think you're in the middle.
Yeah, you do.
think you're in the middle until they go out and you see behaviors. Because even, as you know, our kids aren't married yet, but we'll see even just behaviors as young adults, and we'll just be like, oh, man.
Yeah, every generation overcorrects
We do.
from the
The
previous
pendulum
generation.
We just
always
try.
swings too
we
far,
don't
right?
typically find the balance. We go,
Right.
"Oh, we're going to really change this."
That's why
And
there's
we,
grace.
We
and
overcorrect.
forgiveness.
Right.
So,
Yeah.
are you the fighter? You're kind of fighter, more of a flight. How would you define personality-wise when it comes to blows, or it's time to get in the ring? Are you more like, let's get in the ring and let's fight, and Amy's peacemaker, let's not? Like, what? How do you? Would you say that?
Fight or flight. If you were
How
to
would
just say fight
how
or
would you
flight.
say that?
Rapid. What's your gut?
Fight, probably like
Yeah.
a lawyer, I would say. Fight like a lawyer. That's how I am.
Yeah, I fight like a fighter. So
You just throw haymakers.
yeah, I mean, it's like she's a lawyer. Like
Okay.
she is going to stay in there.
Very
and
logical
just-
and just.
yeah, I mean, she's logical until she isn't, and then.
Beat you down with her words.
Well, I
Big
mean,
words.
she can get pretty fired up, but I want this to come out the right way. It's like I my instinct is to fight,
Mm-hmm.
but there's a certain point where I'm like, okay, there's enough of this, because if I say anything more, it's just not going to be good.
Mm.
So it's not like, and so a lot of times, I'll just walk away because I know anything I say next is really going to be damaging. So, I mean, here's the thing. I grew up, again, it's like, you grew up in the 70s, 80s. It's like you grew up in school, you have an argument with somebody, you walk outside, you go behind the building, you fight, like physically fight, and it's over.
Right.
Well, I'm certainly not going to do that with her. But it's just, I don't know if I ever really saw a great picture of how to fight properly.
Right.
And so, it's like
So you guys had to develop that.
yeah, we've had to work on that over the years and really learn how to do that, because it's like when my parents would fight, my dad would drink or my mom would leave.
Mm.
And so I have two extremes of, watching them fight. And so it was like I would go to the bar with my dad and literally watch him get in fist fights with people when he was drunk. And then I would watch my mom leave. And I remember, laying under the tire of my mom's car after they'd gotten a big fight, begging her not to leave. And my dad's like, don't back up. Don't. So I never saw a great picture of really how to fight well. And so, yeah, I mean, it's just one of those things we've had to work on over the years.
Yeah, my parents never fought, or
they never
hardly
fought,
ever even disagreed, and so I think we had to figure that out for ourselves.
Sure.
Plus, when you've been married a long time, you change. Like,
Oh, yeah.
you're not the girl he married
Right.
that many years ago,
Right.
and so I think I've just become stronger with having two
She's
strong-willed
much
boys
stronger.
in my house.
Oh, I
I'm
know.
not the
I've
same
seen it
person
in
anymore.
27 years.
Yeah, and
I've seen
I've probably calmed
more,
down a bit.
I'm probably more ready to.
go to blows.
Yeah, but we never argue
Yeah,
for
no.
very long. I don't know. We don't have time to argue.
So
very long.
generally,
Yeah.
generally,
That's
I
true.
would say that we as humans, we're pretty selfish, right? We want what we want. And so when you talk about your parents never fought, it raises this question mark in my head, like, well, one of them must have been less selfish than the other, because like they're both thinking their thing. They can't be on the same page all the time, but yet this person or this person's going to give grace and back down a little bit to keep peace. Because can you look backwards and say, oh yeah, that for sure happened, like
I'm gonna
100%.
guess so.
Yeah. Yeah, that's what I would think for sure.
I think I saw that.
Yeah.
to some degree.
What you can say is, I don't want to fight, or I am absolutely loving you as Christ would love the church, right? That no matter what you say, whatever you think, I'm going to love you through this, and I'm just going to take the trample, right?
Mm-hmm.
So that's interesting. That's just an interesting thing, because to grow up in a very, very peaceful house, I know in my house, my mom would be the one that would want to fight. My dad would fight, and so it looked very, very peaceful, but all he was doing was just running from it, and probably who knows what he was thinking, because they got divorced when I was 19. So it obviously, that rug got so much stuff underneath it, it finally just blew off, and that was that.
Yeah.
Different, because one was saved and one wasn't. So, they decided not to stay together, or he didn't. But it's just an interesting thing to think about, right? To look back and see that.
And my parents had a very different, like I said, they had a different kind of marriage after my dad got saved.
Sure.
And so, but your early years are your most formative years.
For sure.
So the things that probably impacted me in the most negative way happened to me probably in the first 4 or 5 years. And so, I mean, a gift from God, I got to see a completely different side. I wouldn't say that all of their issues were certainly resolved, as I said earlier, but it's, I think, again, for both of us, I mean, we're both very strong personalities. And so, again, we thought we were coming in with all these similarities, and then we realized, no, we grew up in very different homes, and we've had to figure that out. I mean, it's taken, still 30 something years for us to continue to figure this out. We're still working on it.
Yeah. for
So
sure.
the relationships that you have outside of the two of you, you're however old you are now. So, every 5 years, let's say you learn more about yourself, and so you can reevaluate, adjust, so forth, so on. You grow, you become more mature. Is there a difference in how you have treated people when you were 30 in the way that the relationships of your parents, right, formed you?
Yeah.
So then you're going to bring that in how your relationships are with just people that you work with,
Yep.
et cetera. like for instance, she's brought up many times having to go back and apologize to the Target person because she went off on them, and the kids were there.
You've heard those stories, right?
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah.
I've had anger issues. It was embarrassing to bring out into
it
the
all
light.
comes out what he said from that little Jennifer, that little Jenny.
Little Jenny's
And
coming
so
out.
she's 50, however old she is. 65?
I'm 57. He keeps trying to make me 60. I'm not there yet.
Anyway, the point is, do you guys find that has happened, that, you have definitely changed over time in your relationships with different people, or just even how you,
For sure.
just
Yeah.
because of your
Hopefully
growth?
all of us are growing and changing for the good, right?
Well, yeah, but there's a lot of people that I know in my family, outside of my family, I can just say there hasn't been any change. There hasn't been any growth. It's the exact same thing. They're dealing, that person is still 10. They're still dealing with that type of trauma, let's say, or whatever you want to call it, and dealing with people the same way. So you have seen changes, I mean, as you've grown, huh?
Yeah, I mean, this has played into our marriage, but you're asking a question, I think, outside of marriage, and
Yeah, for other relationships.
it would be interesting to hear Amy your take on this. But I mean, my 20s, early 30s. I mean, I'm a very driven, like talking about being very direct, very straightforward, and so, I mean, those early years of I think in terms of being in ministry and this and that, but I think I had to go back and go, why was I so crazy driven? So I was talking to our staff the other day about when we started Westridge. I mean, we were working 70, 80 hours a week. I was on my phone all the time. It was just crazy. And I've had to go back and unpack all of that over the years and go, why was I like that? And I think that there were things that were said to me as I was growing up. Coaches said things to me. People said things to me. Moms of girlfriends said things to me. My dad, this is an interesting thing. And, I want to be careful how I say this because my dad's not here to defend himself. But, whenever my dad would see a group of boys that he thought were just up to no good, he would call them punks. And so when I would push my dad's button really extreme, he would say, you know what, you're a punk. And so it was like somebody, I think people, they don't even realize when they're growing up, people are speaking words over them as almost curses. And what people do is they're striving to find a blessing. They're striving to find somebody, a dad, a mama, an authority figure to bless them. And I never felt like my dad, I always felt loved by my dad. He communicated that to me. But it was like, I think late 20s, early 30s or so, and maybe even a little bit later, I don't know. But I think this striving, this drive, part of it is I grew up with this blue collar work ethic. There was a saying in my family, no one outworks a Bloye. So that was inside of me. I'm going to outwork everybody. But I think I was out to prove a lot of people wrong that said things up to me. You're never going to do this. You're never going to amount to this. Whatever. You're a punk. And so I think in some ways, to answer your question, I would blow right over people. And not even realizing that I would do that. And I would say things. And some of those things were said to her. And I think, so this is, it's one of those deals you look back and you go, I did not realize at this moment how important this was. I'm speaking with my dad. It's 2004. It's Father's Day. We're speaking on blessing your children, giving your children a blessing. There's 5 points. I've got 3. He's got 2. We've talked through this whole thing of how this sermon's going to go. It's over at the East Paulding High School gym. And I give the first point, how to bless your kids, give your kids a blessing. Number 2, he goes completely off the script. I'm sitting on a stool behind him and I'm thinking, what is he doing? I don't know how to transition out of this moment. He's talking about his dad and how his dad can communicate love and how my aunts and uncles are still bitter and how he's learned to forgive his dad. And I'm just sitting there going, what in the world are we doing here? So I get up, I go right back to point 3. Like, I don't even know what just happened there. He gets up and does point 4, and he is, again, like off script talking about me and Kevin and how he loved us and how, and and then I'm sitting back there and I'm stewing. People don't even know I'm stewing. And and this is what he says. He says, and now I want to introduce to you my son, Greatness. And I swear, I'm sitting here thinking, what the heck was that? Not realizing that he was going to die 4 days later, 5 days later. And that's exactly what I needed.
That was like 25 years of
I needed
trash that got taken off
I
of
needed
you.
to hear him say that. I never felt any different from him. Like, he always instilled, like, you can do this. My mom even more so. But for whatever reason, that moment, even though I was irritated by it, not knowing he was going to die 5 years later, he spoke a word of blessing over me, and it changed me. It was a changing point in my life. It was like, okay. And I'm just telling you, there was a shift inside of me, not only at that moment, but when he died. And
then you really
I
knew.
think in many ways I began to become a different person. And it was like, I think hopefully over the years I become, and with some counseling and this and that, and just a kinder person.
Isn't it crazy?
More relaxed.
There's a scary feeling, like, what have I not said or what have I said to my kids?
Mm-hmm.
I don't even know.
Yeah.
The
Life's not
impact,
promised.
both positively and negatively, have I had on my kids?
Yeah.
I don't even know, because of like what you just said. It's so complex. It's so deep
Yeah.
that it's, I
Yeah.
guess you pray through it and hope.
It's the Jacob and Esau story. I mean, if we're constantly looking for a blessing, or we're just desperately looking for a blessing, we could become schemers. And so, or just, we're just run right over people. And that was, I think, my personality in some ways. And so I think a lot of, we've had to, again, some counseling, we've had to work through some things, but, our first counseling was in 2011. And we get into this counseling, and she starts bringing stuff up from I'm like, where is this coming from? Well, it was the early days of just stupid things I said and did to her. And again, it was just coming all from all of that junk I was bringing in. And it wasn't even so much my parents, it was other people speaking things over me as almost curses, and me striving for a blessing or to prove myself to people. And that plays into your marriage.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Has there been a difference with you, Amy, like in regards to that? Or
Yeah, I think so. I think just like we were talking about, just understanding people for who they really are has helped me give people grace more. I remember, like, when we first got married and his little brother was in our wedding. He was 2. He was our ring bearer.
So funny.
And I'm like, I swear I'm never going to have a little kid in my wedding. And then I marry a man with a 2-year-old brother. And so he was the cutest little thing. And he was all dressed in this little Lord Fauntleroy outfit with this little
He looked like a
pillow.
little English boy.
He
Oh,
did.
my gosh.
But before that, I remember going to the toy store with him and your parents, and him freaking out, like screaming, and he was so upset. Like, he screamed until he threw up because he couldn't have this big toy he wanted.
No way.
And we got out of the van with his family, and I said, that right there is why I don't want to have kids. And I thought, my kids will never be that way. My kids will never act that way. And I said that to him because I won't let them do that. Okay. Little was I surprised, right? You can't control what your kids do, and you can do the best you can. But through marrying someone who's very strong-willed and birthing 2 boys who are crazy strong-willed.
Very strong-willed.
Yeah.
Living in a house with 3 strong-willed men.
With ADD.
Also with ADD times 3. And then coming from a very calm family where no one fought or anything. Like, all that jumbled up. I guess it's just made me want to give people grace and to say, I thought I would never do this. I thought I would never cuss at my kids. I thought I would never, have kids that didn't do exactly what I said when they were 3 years old. And now I just look and go, you know what? It's okay. Bless people's sweetheart. Yeah. We're all doing the best we can do. And I think truly to trust God with all of that, and not thinking that I have it all together. Maybe there was some point where I thought, if you do all the right things, you're going to get all the right outcomes, right? And that's not always true. Sometimes you just do the very best you can, and so the answer for me is just that I see people through more grace-filled eyes and go, people are doing the best they can. And I'm just wanting to love people big.
Less judgy. Me too.
Yeah, totally.
You don't even realize you're judging, and you're judging.
Right.
Right? Yeah. I know, me too.
Yeah.
I think it's interesting by asking you guys that question and knowing the differences, how you grew up in the family and God puts you together, it's like this, to me, it's this little joke. He always puts these people together. Not only are we different because we're man and woman, but he puts us together with the strengths and weaknesses that you have and the strengths and weaknesses that you have. And it will be absolutely a nuclear bomb if you don't put it together. Mm-hmm. It will be. And it's God's way saying, go ahead, try it on your own. Try it on your own. Mm-hmm. This is not going to work. You have to look to me. You have to. And when you do, then all your deficiencies, it's like all her strengths whittles you down and it works well, and then vice versa. And it's just this beautiful thing to see come together, but it's work. I mean, it's tough, but it makes this incredible, cake at the end. If you can look to him and be guided by him, then it works out. But it's crazy to think about where we started and where we came only by the grace of God, because it's just too different. Mm-hmm. It's absolutely too different. Yep. It's just amazing. It's neat to see, and it's hopeful, and that's why we're doing this. But it's work. But it's work. It also it is also better than you can imagine.
Yeah, it's worth it. Exactly. It's worth it. It's so worth it to pull the magic carpet away and go, we're going to dig into this, because
it's true.
It's harder to start over.
You become better people. I think you become better of what God wanted us to be.
Yeah.
It's honoring
but people
to
do. A lot of you think, marriage is so easy. It's easy, but it's not easy. And just don't go into it thinking that it's not hard work. That doesn't mean it's not wonderful and joyful and all that, but it is hard work.
It's the hardest work you'll do, but it's the most fulfilling by far once you get through that hard work.
Sure.
And it's like anything that you've ever do, whether it's sports or work or whatever, or a diet or whatever it is, the harder you work, the more time you put into it, the sweeter it is.
Mm-hmm. That's true.
Everything in our lives is like that. There's a parallel with it all.
Want me to take the next one?
You may.
All right. So what are a couple, or 1 or 2 or 10, reoccurring challenges that you guys have had in your marriage or in your relationship, and how do you handle them?
Reoccurring.
Like something you just can't shake, or
I see a smirk. I see a smirk on your face, so I think he wants Amy to.
I do. Or like how you're, not like fights, but just like, we're still dealing with this.
Most of us have like this list of challenges, and it's the same ones you keep running through,
it's a hamster wheel, right?
It is. It's a wheel.
So what are yours? And how do you handle them? Go ahead, Amy.
Well, I actually wrote down a couple of these things.
You did? Well, this worked out. Okay.
No, I think it's been a challenge having my family live far away, and then we live near his family, and that's been hard for me. And you know that, like, you live far away from your family, you have to make time to go see them, and that's been a challenge for us for sure.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I mean, I think we were actually talking about this last week. I mean, there's just a lot of things that Amy feels like she has missed out on because we've been here for 27 years. My parents moved here in 2001. So, that's a constant as you watching her parents get older, of just feeling like, my goodness, we missed out. And then, early years, I was scared to death to be left with the boys by myself. And so I didn't realize I was keeping her from leaving. I didn't realize I was doing that, but I did. And it wasn't, I was trying to keep her from going to see her family. It was like, I was scared to death to be left with them. And, and also I was so busy. So it was like, we were just so stinking busy. Mm-hmm. So that's part of it. Yeah. There's little things like Amy's a foodie. I am not.
And we just kind of came to that conclusion a couple years ago.
And it's a deal. Like it's a deal in our marriage. We had no idea that it was such a deal. But I don't think a lot about food. It's not that I don't like it, but
food is fuel to you.
Yeah. It's, so it's like,
food is vacation for us.
Yeah.
I love it.
Yeah. My first visit to her house before we were married, I mean, it was like her dad was having pancakes with chocolate ice cream. And I'm like,
oh yeah,
what is happening right now? It's like, I don't eat like that. So it was like, we've had to make some adjustments. And I think I am very frugal. I'm a saver. And she's not so much. So we've had to work through all of that. And I would say, I am very, very much with my emotions, people, I'm very open with, you don't have to really guess a lot of where I'm coming from. Whereas I think Amy certainly has. She is much, much more herself and open, but I think for me, I've had to learn how to kind of pull layers back a little bit over the years, and really get to the heart of who Amy really is. But some of that is because I said some things to her early on that were hurtful. And again, it goes back to my conversation before, and a lot of times I didn't even realize we were doing it.
Of course.
We have this epic little story that I'll share. I actually shared this with our staff the other day, and we wrote a book, and it's in the book, so it's out there. But I mean, this just gives you an example. Like early on, we were living in Virginia. I was a student pastor. We were out every single night.
Like every single night.
She was a full-time school teacher. We didn't have kids yet. We walk into our house, and she collapses into my arms, like physically collapses into my arms. We fall back on the couch, and she just tears, and she's like, I just can't do this anymore. I can't continue this pace. And so I should have just held her and said, hey, listen, you don't have to do this anymore. We'll figure something out. What I said was, well, maybe you don't love students as much as I do. So
Yes, he did say that.
yeah. So
I believe it.
yeah, no. So when you say things like that, it will make somebody close themselves off.
Yeah.
Her little wall.
Yeah.
came up.
And so
Probably for years.
Yeah.
Probably that statement did that to me for years.
Gosh.
yeah.
Because now
Wow.
I'm coming after you for saying that to me. But back then I thought maybe you're right, or I didn't know what to say to that.
Yeah. But again, part of it is how I grew up. I'm just
Exactly.
very straightforward,
That's-
direct. I'm just and part of it was, I said some hurtful things. Hurtful. Just, I mean, whatever you want to call
And
them.
I
If you
think
want to put them in the sinful category, I have no idea. But
my
they
default
hurt her.
would be that I'm not enough or
Yeah.
I'm not done enough. So if you want to confirm that, oh, see, you're not enough. You haven't done enough. I'm like, what more do I need to do? Like slip my wrist and bleed for everyone? So that to me just confirmed, Amy, you're not enough and you'll never do enough. And that,
Yeah.
I just would just file that.
Oh, yeah.
But she brought that into our marriage.
Yeah.
Because when you grow up in a very, very legalistic environment, like we both did, you respond one of two ways. You either go after lawless, you go break laws, or go off the rails, or you
Follow them to a T.
Yeah, or you keep all the
Perfection.
rules.
And I followed all the rules.
And so, I mean, and there's other things too. Like she would just, early on, she would say, "How do I look in this?" Well, I'd tell her. So, I mean, it was just not a lot of feel sometimes. And so,
I'm so sorry.
next thing I know, I'm like, "How come you never wear that color?" She says, "Well,
You
however
told
many
me
years
I
ago."
look bad in it, so I
Right.
haven't worn it for
I'm like,
20
"What?
years.
What are you talking about?"
He's
So-
like, what? What are you talking about? I'm like,
Yeah.
well,
So
you said that,
Yeah.
so
That's a boy-girl thing too, right?
it totally is.
That's definitely
is.
a boy-girl
you
thing.
have to learn. And
Little bit.
we're talking about like
tact.
fighting
It's
or
all tact.
arguing, whatever. And the point of that, because I was thinking about this a while ago, the point of whatever you want to call it, fighting or arguing, is not really to win or to be right, right? But it's to understand the other person, and it's to help them understand you. And we just had like some big discussion last week, like an argument.
mhm.
And what we found was, I was thinking something totally different, right? He
Yeah.
wasn't even thinking about it. And this is what he meant. This is
Yeah.
what, and I'm like, I just want you to know this is what I was thinking. And it was all news, right? And so I guess through the years, just going, I'm not trying to be right or trying to win, but I want to know you more. And I want you
Yes.
to know my heart
Yeah.
and where this is coming from.
Yeah.
Yeah. So.
Wow.
Yeah, I would say just over the years, I mean, we've had to dig in, and what Amy just described is like, we're going to go after these things and be brutally honest and keep peeling off layers. Some of them I have nothing to do with. Some of them she has nothing to do with.
Mhm.
It's
Outside
junk we brought
forces,
in.
Yeah.
And but yeah, we still, it's just interesting. I mean, she will tell me how she feels now. So there's really no problem there anymore. But at the same time, she'll go, "Hey, how do I look in this?" And I like,
Yeah, I want to know the color. I want to know the color.
Red.
Red.
Yeah.
Well, there are different shades of red, but I
just
think she'd look.
We've
good.
gotten past that now.
So I thought. So
that's
based on what
not
you
good.
said, based on what you said, I thought of a new question that I don't have written down.
Okay.
How has sarcasm played a part of your relationship? Because, and I bring this up, folks, because I'm from Illinois, he's from Michigan. Northerners have a bit of sarcasm, if not a bit, a lot.
And
Yeah, this
mostly
guy-
for the people you love the most,
And
right?
it's because it is 100% for the people you love.
Mhm.
It's probably
Exactly.
way worse for guys than girls. But I'll just say
Yeah,
from my
this-
own
yeah.
experience, my sarcasm, I feel like I'm a very nice person. And if you get sarcasm from me, it's because I love you immensely. It's not because I'm trying to
Right.
dig at you at all. And do you think that that is a little bit of your DNA as well? Is your sarcasm?
Two brothers from another mother.
Yeah, I
In
mean,
a loving way,
Listen,
though.
sarcasm was a love language in my family.
Yeah,
You know, it's like
exactly.
if you go to my house in Michigan, any relative in Michigan, there's going to be sarcasm. You know, but at the same time, if you work in ministry worlds, even like before I came here, sarcasm was huge. Like you go back to Lynchburg, I mean, it's big.
Thick.
And so yeah, it's like, okay, this is great. I roll in this
And
environment.
in the
then
80s, people were
Oh.
more sarcastic.
Yeah.
Now people have to tiptoe around
yeah.
lest you hurt someone's feelings.
Yeah.
Right? But
Now
back
it's
then,
gone too
no.
crazy.
It meant I love you.
Yeah.
If they're sarcastic.
Did it
so-
affect your relationship? Were you too sarcastic for her?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think I was too
Okay.
sarcastic for her family. So, you know, again, this plays into like northern southern stuff.
Yeah.
You know, it's like
Really north and
I'm
south.
blowing into her family. You know, they've never met me, and I'm like, okay, I think Amy just dropped a complete foreign object in this house. You know, and so yeah, you know, the thing is that I think as you hopefully grow in Christ and you become more mature, you hopefully become kinder. I'm actually speaking on kindness this weekend. And I've had to learn, there are people who have been on our staff who, you know, I've had to go back and go, listen, I was totally joking. I was being sarcastic. And it's like, but people look at me differently because I'm a senior pastor. I've had to learn to understand that just because of the seat I sit in. But here's the thing. I've also had to learn that a lot of people just don't roll that way.
Yeah.
And so I've just had to go, okay, this is somebody that I can, just kind of, I don't really have a lot of hair to let down, but let my hair down with.
Right.
But at the same time, I also had to realize too that sarcasm is it can be very hurtful, and I really don't go there much anymore. I really don't. I do with you.
Right.
But I would say, and I'm just going to say this because you asked us to be very raw and
Yes.
authentic. I don't so much with her anymore. Sometimes. Because she's a safe place for me. But I would say most women, period,
right.
I'm not sarcastic
Right.
with because I don't want to hurt people.
Right.
And I realize like the role that I play, I mean, first and foremost, I'm a Christ follower. So I don't want to hurt people. But I also sit in a seat that sometimes I don't recognize the weight of my words
Yeah.
and how people hear things differently from me. And so this is the truth. I've had to go
Yeah.
back to people who, like when I was so-and-so, you said this, and I'm like, I don't remember that. And I've had to go apologize.
Yeah.
But I've had to just apologize to her for if she brings it up, I'm sorry for it
Yeah.
because
Your intention was not at all.
well,
Yeah,
and
that's
to
the
hurt.
thing.
and I was a different person, I mean, I was trying to walk with Christ, but it was like, I'm a young version of myself. And,
Right.
again, trying to, figure some things out, maybe trying to get blessing. Who knows, all the things. But, I try as hard as I can now because sarcasm is not the best
Right.
way to roll in a marriage,
Right.
to be as kind as I possibly can with her, knowing that I am still going to say some stupid things and I'm going to be a turd. So,
And it's okay. Because we both do those things.
And that's the thing too. We talk
Yeah.
about friendships, relationships, marriage, whatever. Is, gosh, if we as humans can try to always, before we jump, keep our mouths closed, before we jump, and to look at someone's intention, their true
Mhm.
intention of their heart. In all honesty, very rarely is the intention poor.
Mm.
It really, unless you're just an absolute ass. It's not that poor. So you kind of just have to always try to remember that. And then you're able, then to maybe speak to the person and be like, hey, I know you probably didn't mean to, but it hurt my heart, that kind of thing. So we kind of always try. It's still a work in progress for myself, but yeah, that's.
So tell us a story where expectations in the relationship caused a fight or disagreement.
Go ahead.
Expectation. That's a good one. I have so many. That's a
I
problem.
think about that me collapsing story is the story that comes to my mind. Just what we expected back then, just to keep doing more and more and teaching school and going to every event.
Like he expected that of you, and hence the comment.
Can you
Yeah.
think of another good one?
No, I mean, I think I do a lot of things. Like, I get into a lot of things. And I think sometimes my expectation is that she's going to jump in these things with me. And she's like, no, I'm not doing that. So,
like right now you're into cold plunging, 46 degrees, like every single morning.
Yes.
And
He got it as a
Pastor
gift.
recommended 3
Correct.
minutes. It's
yeah, but I was
10.
doing it before then.
Is that what you're talking about? Like you
No,
expect that I'm going to be like you, that I'm going to eat what you eat and watch what you watch and do all these things. And well, I probably did try to do all of those things at the beginning when we first got married. Like, oh, we're going to do all these things together. But sometimes the truth came out and I'm like, I don't really like that. So now I
Right.
don't cold plunge.
Right.
I did
right.
once, but like I'm not your
It was
cold plunge
torture.
girl.
Right.
No.
No, I mean, it's not that I expect her to do things, but when I get into something, it's like I want everybody to do it with me.
Yeah, it's like,
Like,
your
That's
partner.
it, right?
I-
He was juicing and using the.
Oh my
I mean,
gosh.
all the.
Okay, I will say this. This is funny. Now, I don't know if this is true, but knowing a little bit, 27 years of them, your dad, if I recall, was Mr. like QVC. He
Oh,
liked
yeah.
my,
Yeah.
right?
My parents.
So anything, there'd be a new
The Home
treadmill.
Shopping
There's a
Network,
new-
there was
yes.
always something going
And
on.
you got a little bit
latest
of that
thing.
in you.
That's
Brian
right.
told,
That is John.
doesn't he? I've noticed it for years. It's not a cut down. It's a sweet
Well-
compliment, but that.
But when he's done, he never goes back.
Right.
He's done. Like do you
He
remember-
throws that
my
toy
boys,
away.
my boys wear me out.
They'll
about
be
this
like,
stuff.
"Mom, what's Dad into right now?
Yes.
Where's Dad eating now? Because he'll eat at the same
I am
restaurant,
very
and then
regimented.
he's done, and he never goes back.
Right.
I've
No, I
seen
would-
that for a
Yeah.
quarter of a century.
That's a little
Yeah.
ADD
Yeah.
right there.
Well, maybe, but I'm also like I am very much into like eating healthy, fitness, all those things, and part of that is I'm not a foodie. Food's kind of fuel for me, so it's like I'm just like that, and so I think unmet expectations on her have been at times to join in that with me.
Right.
Mm.
Why aren't you like me this way? But
And
not saying
again, it
that.
goes back to something she said earlier. In the early days, if she felt that she wasn't rolling with me and all that stuff, she didn't feel like she was enough. And so that is where that would go to. And I'm just like, man, this is heavy. Like I'm just asking you to like roll with me in this. And it was like, no, why is this such a heavy thing? But there was more going on there.
Like you want me
sure.
to exercise with you? You want me to eat the salad with you? You think I'm fat. That's,
Right.
That's the problem.
And I'm
I
like,
am not
no, I
enough
don't think
for
this.
you.
That's right.
And so, and
Yep.
and in his
I just
mind,
want you to like
he's
salads.
oh, this is what I'm doing this week. Now we've got the treadmill, and now it's the
Right.
Peloton, and
Yep.
then we were doing all these different things, and he wants me to do these things with him, and I'm like, you think I'm not good enough? That's why you want me to go get
This
on
is
the
who she's
Peloton,
become.
Right. No, I know.
And then
like,
there was a part of me that's
Heck no, I'm not
now
doing
there's
that
not
with you.
one chance I'm getting on the
Right.
Peloton. But no, and through all that, the free tattoo was like, not only am I free from stuff in my past, but I'm free from worrying that he doesn't think I'm enough. Because
Right.
ultimately, only Jesus can tell us we're
Right.
enough. And we
Right.
are enough because of him,
Yeah.
not because of counseling
Yeah.
or because we came from a wonderful, sweet family or whatever. We're enough because he says we are. And ultimately, in a marriage, I'm like, that's
Yeah.
what you have to lean on,
Right.
right? All your security and all your significance coming from Jesus.
Yeah.
And not even your spouse, because we don't even have the ability to
Yeah.
fill each other's bucket as much as you want to and try
Right.
to.
And that's
Right.
the pleaser. like you and I both kind of want to please.
Yes.
And I would think the same thing. Anytime he said something different that I didn't fully agree with, especially early on in the marriage, I was just like, I'll do whatever he says because, I'm supposed to. And he'll like me more. Like we're already married, but he'll like me more and not leave me. And, now we just had it wasn't a thing, a disagreement, but it really wasn't. What was it about flying? Something about flying. Like he's always...
Oh,
to
about
this day,
long trips versus shorter trips?
still dropping little bombs of me wanting to get my pilot's license. Is it something I'd like to do? Sure. Is it high on my bucket list? Not really.
Are you
That's
getting
why,
your pilot's license?
That's why I never wanted to be a pilot, and I'm a flight attendant because I don't want to be stuck up there with someone I don't like for 10 hours. Really?
Yeah, I didn't know this.
And so he still brings it up every once in a while. Not to go be with an airline, but just fly little
For
planes.
fun.
But you guys, it's a lot of math. If you know me, you don't want me figuring out how to
Jim,
calculate.
that's not you.
That's true. No, it's not.
I
So,
think you're a pilot.
but he said something maybe a couple weeks ago, and I actually said, I don't want to do that. I want to do it, but I don't want to go to all the trouble to get there. Just, can you teach me hands-on? But do I need to know this part?
She wants to learn how to take off and land and fly, but she
Without
doesn't want to
the
know
numbers.
any rules, no anything. Just airspace,
Because that stresses
weather,
you out, right? That doesn't fill your
numbers,
bucket. That doesn't
Federal
fill the
aviation
bucket.
regulations.
That stresses her
Just
out.
take off, fly,
So I
land,
may
like
have-
drive a car.
So I
but
may-
don't look at the signs, don't know what the speed limit is, nothing.
Okay.
Just
Well,
drive.
Wait. So I may have had a little PTSD moment in the back where I maybe said to him, look, if you want to marry someone else that really wants to be a pilot and you marry another pilot, go ahead and do that. Obviously, I didn't mean it, but that's kind of the stuff
That's not enough.
it's
the
like,
same
I'm
thing.
not enough for you. I'm all these things, and by gummit, I'm great. But now I need to be a pilot. Come on. Yeah.
Yeah. There are a lot of things.
So again, let me interrupt you
Sure,
though,
sure.
so we don't get off this. My intention, again, it's the intention.
right.
The intention is I know that she would enjoy being able to take off and land an airplane.
So
I know
wanna do
that
it.
it's the incredibly fulfilling to do that. I know she would enjoy all the rules and all the things that you have to do. But my intention is you should go get your pilot's license. Not so you can become anything. I just know that you would be like, holy smokes, I did it. I did it. I can take off and I can land.
You have all the best intentions.
That's it.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. And that's always my intention is it's like I think you would enjoy this. So I want to force you into it because I think you will enjoy this
I
as
think you
opposed
would
to
enjoy
do it
the-
because you'll be better
the tone
and I'll
of it.
like you more and all that. No, I think you really would enjoy it if you would just give it a shot.
Super
That's
love
like
the
Brian
tone.
And
telling
she's
me I
hearing-
love the Mediterranean diet.
Yeah, and she's hearing I'm not enough because I
Even
don't want to do it.
Even I know Amy. She's not going to love the Mediterranean diet.
No.
All right, sorry.
But
Sorry, off track.
but there've been so many conversations that we've had over the years, and she would go to this I'm not enough, and I'm like I never meant that. Like I'm
Right.
like I'm
Right.
and here's where we are now. It's like we'll get into these conversations, and I'm like we need to get past this. Like that was never what
The
I was saying.
intention.
And she will
Right.
say to me, I free you up from that.
Yeah.
Yes.
I free you up from that. And it's like, okay, we're
Yeah.
but
We're good about that
Yeah.
now. But those things still creep back.
Sure,
And
they
you have to
can.
remind yourself.
Yes. New Brian, not
you
old
have
Brian.
my best interests.
Yeah.
And you're not putting me down at all.
Right.
But that's the crap that comes out in me.
Yeah.
yeah, whereas
It's like the first
My
go-to.
go-to.
Yeah.
well, she'll tell
Can't
me
help it.
like that right now, if something's coming up. Like if I say something, I don't have to wait a long time
To hear
get it
about
out.
it.
It's coming. So
Isn't it amazing, though, how these things to this day, 35 years later, 40 years later, from the time that this foundation was built as a child, you're still having to work on those little Amy, little Michael, little Brian, those little things, because Satan says, you're not enough.
Yeah.
I'm going to
Yeah.
use those things in the past that were hurtful that you didn't even realize were hurtful. You're just growing up.
Exactly.
And he grabs back to the old stuff, shoves it in your face, and here it is 35 years later. It's a constant reliance on what you said, Amy. Jesus is enough. God loves me the way I am. No human's going to tell me otherwise. But this is all Satan has, is to just force it in front of my eyes.
Little whispers.
And do I believe
Well-
it? Do I believe it? No, I do
Yeah.
not. But that's all he has, is to mess
Right.
with you.
And it's I think every guy walks through this life going, do I have what it takes?
Yeah.
It's the question. And every woman walks through life going, am I beautiful? Am I lovely? Am I enough? And so I don't care who you are.
Yeah,
I mean,
that's
you're
true.
interviewing us. This is not unique.
No,
And-
it's correct.
No.
Yep.
So, but how you answer those questions and realizing that it really all goes back to Christ. And when you walk into a marriage and you're like, you're going to answer my question for me, and I'm going to, then that's when, because we come in with baggage, we come in broken, we come in with junk, whether you know you're coming in or you realize you're coming in, like you guys, I walked in knowing I had a lot of junk. She took a while to,
And that's how I was
figure all
too.
that out.
I
Yeah.
had to figure it out.
Yeah.
Yeah, but we both
it's-
walked in with the same exact the question that I just
Right.
a moment ago. Am I enough? Am I beautiful? Am I lovely?
Yep.
And do I have what it takes? That was my question. And if you're looking outside of Christ in any way to find the answer to those questions, you're not only going to continue to run into dead end walls, but you're going to put something on the other person that they can't deal with.
Oh,
They
yeah.
can't answer it.
Right.
That's
Yeah.
so good.
And
yeah.
so,
You're right. You're right.
Why don't you take number 7?
oh, here we go.
Think way back, everybody. Think way back. Because this is important. We ask this to
Well, this is-
couples.
Yeah,
and
yeah.
it can be helpful, yeah. So, how was sex discussed before you got married in your relationship? And what boundaries did you put on yourselves prior to getting married?
Or wish that you would have put on
Or-
yourself.
Yeah.
And why?
Yeah.
And then do you have different boundaries today that you would say
To you,
versus
people
the
who aren't, yeah.
versus the past? So
There's Brian's smirk again. There he goes.
Go ahead, Amy.
You can take this one.
Yeah, I mean, this is an interesting question because Amy, she came into our marriage, just as pure as you could be, and I came in with a little bit of baggage. I was engaged twice before, we got married, and so it's like I had, and I've talked about this publicly, but I had about 3.5 years of college where I was really pushing away from God, pushing away from the church for a lot of different reasons. And I made some bad decisions. And so some sinful decisions as it related to sex. And part of it is Amy, she grew up in this house where, and I'll let her say what she wants about it, but there wasn't I grew up in a house where, I think at 4 or 5 years old, I discovered pornography. And so it was like in every home that we would visit, there was that. And I have just crazy stories of, walking into environments where there's pornography going on. So, from my earliest memories all the way through college, there was that theme.
yeah.
And so here I am in college, not really walking with the Lord, and I'm making some bad decisions. And, when I met her, I'm first of all thinking, there's no way this girl's going to date me, because we're bringing some different stuff into this relationship. And just, she was as grace-filled as she could possibly be. I was as honest. I told her everything, with a lot of it in a shorter span of time, but there was this consistent pattern of stuff over my life. And all that stuff plays into your sex life,
Sure.
Of
course it does.
And so, good, there's really not a good, bad, or ugly. It's bad or ugly. And so I think for us, when we got married, the boundaries were tight before we got married. We were engaged for 3 months, and so, we walked down the aisle, and I probably had a lot of sexual baggage, and she didn't have any, as far as, but homes that we grew up in, I think, impact that stuff, and how you see sex, how you view it, impacts it. So here I am, exposed to all of this stuff, seeing a lot of things, and then, participating in some things, and I'm walking into it with that. But at the same time, there's this religious church thing over that was somewhat dysfunctional as well. So we walk into both of those with that. And I'll let her talk about, what she wants to say here. But as far as today, I personally, for being in our 50s, I think we have a very healthy sex life. And I think we realize it's an important part of our marriage. And, couples who get to be our age or even younger than us, I mean, it just becomes less frequent and it becomes something that doesn't happen anymore. And I think it's a gift. And I feel like, honest truth, I feel like, first of all, I'm grateful. Not only has God forgiven me for a lot of that stuff, but Amy, this is one thing about her. She's never held that over my head. She's never brought it up. She's never thrown it at me. She's never used it as a weapon. She knows that I feel much, much worse about all of that than she could probably make me feel. And yet at the same time, I know I'm forgiven and covered in grace.
Sure.
But it impacts things.
Yeah.
And so I think for us, it's, here's what I think about sex right now. There's still more to go. Still more to learn. There's still more to experience. And I think as far as boundaries, I think it's something that we just go, this is our boundaries. This is where we feel comfortable as a couple. Here's what we've talked about, what we've decided. And we're in agreement on this. And so I think couples, when they're in agreement on whatever, and they're married in a married relationship, I'm not saying that everything is, and there's some weird stuff going on. I'm not into that. But
So as far as boundaries from what you're saying, okay, then there's another boundary that I want to ask you about.
Sure.
Which is the boundary of, like, for instance, with social media, I can't be on any of those things because there's too much in my past mentally that if I am on Instagram, if I'm on Twitter, X, if I'm on anything, I know myself. And so I have to set up these really strict boundaries because I know if the door isn't open, I can't even take a little peek. That's just me. And I think it's a consequence of the way I grew up and of what I saw, of what I did, that I have to have these boundaries. It's just a consequence. That's fine because it keeps me away. Do you find that if you look at yourself and say, yeah, I got some boundaries, like, do you have boundaries that you have that maybe another pastor or another friend or whatever doesn't necessarily have, and that's just you and you just own it? Because I've gotten to the point where I just own it. It's like, hey, check this out. I can't go there. Yeah. I can't watch that.
Yep.
I'm me. I can't watch that.
Yeah.
I'm okay with that because I want to have these boundaries.
And because I think we've seen so many people through the years just lose their marriage, lose their integrity, and it's heartbreaking. And when you see that so much, it's like a huge caution light.
Big time.
What do we have to put in place so that doesn't happen?
Because it's thrown in our faces.
Exactly.
Whether, like, he's not on any social media anymore, but it's everywhere.
Still
you
everywhere.
Go to the store, I mean, it's everywhere. And he, I have to type in a code when he wants to go to Home Depot. It's weird. It pulls something sexual there. I don't know, but yeah,
it's a sexy place.
What's happening at Home Depot?
I don't know. There's the weirdest things he looks for, and he's like,
strange.
"I need the code, Jennifer."
Yeah, but it's like
that's
knowing
okay.
yourself.
That's y'all's issues.
Like you said, knowing yourself and giving grace, and then setting up some just wise boundaries and saying, "God, give us wisdom and protect us, and keep our marriage strong." Like, you don't go to lunch with women by yourself. You don't counsel women with the door shut by yourself. I'm not like riding in a car with men just by myself. Just because we've set up some of those boundaries, right?
Yeah. I mean, social media is definitely a trap. And I think for years, when the boys were on our payroll and we were, still paying for their phones. I mean, we had covenant eyes on our phones, and Amy, if I'm going somewhere bad, she's seeing it. So for years, but here's the deal. At the end of the day,
they did it.
You can have all those things set up, but if a guy really wants to go to a bad place or find things, you're going to go there. So it really does come down to the heart. And I think, for me, as Amy just alluded to this a moment ago, I mean, I have sat across from numerous people and numerous pastors who are confessing affairs to their spouse, and almost 100% of the time, pornography or something like that was involved in it. I mean, the affair started well before there was another woman involved. Your heart just goes and so, I think, knowing that all of that's in my past, I'm trying to be, as honest as I can possibly be with her, give her as much access whenever she she doesn't really ask me for a lot of it. But at the same time, I mean, I just put a lot of things in my world for accountability. I meet with 4 guys every month at the same restaurant on the same Thursday, and they ask me tough questions. And Amy just, called the Billy Graham rules. We don't ride in a car.
Yeah.
And here's the thing, I get criticized for stuff like that. I catch criticism, and I just don't care.
Right.
Because I have so many pastors and men who I've sat across from, and it just scares the mess out of you.
Yeah.
And this is a little crazy little story. We were staying at this little condo last Thursday, and we're watching this lagoon. I think I sent you a picture of this. And there's this bird, this osprey is just up in a tree. And I look at Amy and I go, look at this bird, how big this bird is. And this bird's just majestically flying over the water, and it keeps landing and trying to grab a fish, and then it's going to try to grab birds. And it's just like
Has like a 3-foot wingspan at least.
This bird owns the lagoon. And we found out later this bird had been like for 4 years, this bird had a nest there. And it was like, and every time this bird would land, he would land on the same spot. And right underneath the grass, there was this alligator that had pulled up and was just sitting right there, about a 5-foot alligator. And I got a picture of this, and I'm watching this take place. And the bird would take off. And I mean, these birds have amazing eyesight. And there's no doubt that bird saw that alligator, because he would just fly right over him and just land. And it was like he was flirting with disaster and seeing how close he could get to the line with temptation and sin.
And he was very comfortable there. He
Yeah.
had gotten comfortable there.
Crazy.
And the alligator just sat there, never moved. And Amy and I turned our backs for just a moment, and all of a sudden the water just went crazy. And we looked back, and this alligator had snatched this bird, and they were fighting in the water. And finally, the alligator took the bird down for about 3 minutes. And then I think I shot you a video of this. This alligator comes back up and is cruising right to us and goes right underneath our deck with this bird and goes down. And it was sobering. It was sobering.
It was an obvious word picture.
Because it's such a picture of stuff that we are dealing with people right now, and things that I've watched over the years. And I don't want to be that bird.
Yeah.
Wow, that's wow.
And
Yes.
the closer, if you want to flirt with that temptation or that sin, because I know it's there. I know it's in my history,
Yeah.
and it could, if I let my guard down, and if I let my heart get cold to the Lord, or if I get arrogant or prideful, and I don't think that's a problem anymore, that alligator is always sitting right there, and he will take me out.
Wow,
and it
what-
never.
And it took a long time, right? You said the bird was there for a long time.
Yeah, and the guy who thinks that I can, this is the craziest thing. I can't tell how many pastors that I've talked to who have said, and even guys, but pastors in general, because that's my world, who have just said, yeah, I knew I was in sin. I knew I was doing this. I thought God was giving me a pass.
Wow. Whoa.
And Satan's just right there, ready to pounce.
Yeah,
and he's very
he's
patient.
so patient.
So all that to say, I've been in
Wow.
ministry for 36 years. We've been married for 33, 32. And it scares me to death.
Yeah. You got to preach it. That's
Scares
such
me
a
to death.
great word picture of sin, no matter what it is.
Yeah.
Seriously. Wow.
Yeah. And I don't want to, I've watched
that's so
I don't want
gross.
to devastate her,
Or birdie. Right.
because
yeah.
it's devastating.
Oh, yeah.
And everything that she's ever felt about herself, I'm not enough.
Oh.
That kind of stuff just pours jet fuel on that.
Oh, yeah. The multiplying of that would be
Oh, yeah.
catastrophic.
Yeah. And I've just been trying for as long as I possibly can in the healthiest way possible to help just bring that, to bring that freedom out of her.
Right. Wow.
Do you want to go on to this?
Do you want to talk about
Oh.
number 7?
I think you said it all.
We'll peel that layer next time. We'll have her on. Where? Oh.
Want to do
Oh,
that?
that segment?
Yeah.
Okay. Michael kind of invented this. It's kind of cute because we're, as you know, airline industry. So we call this next segment, How to Not Skid Off the Runway. So these are rapid fire. You get 1 minute per question. And it's just basically best advice. And then I'm going to give you 5. So, and either or. So what's the best advice you can give when dealing with social media usage? Go.
Okay, I would say to believe the truth and not to believe lies. Because a lot of social media is not even real, right? A lot of the pictures that are posted, they're not even a normal picture. It's like the 100th picture that was taken, and it's the teeth are whitened and people make themselves skinny, and a lot of it, it's like, here's me living my best life. And on social media, I would say you have to believe the truth and not let yourself be taken in by lies, and it just affects your life. Like you look at social media, and to me, I think, okay, I'm not enough because there's all these people. This is their best life. They're doing all these things. Their house is perfect. They're perfect. Their kids are perfect. They're traveling everywhere. Like, life is great. And you just have to remind yourself, okay, believe what's true. That's not even all accurate. And don't let Satan lie to you, right? Believe what God says about you.
Yeah.
So really looking at the social media, if I'm hearing you right, it makes it seem like social media is going to bring out that part of you that we've already talked about for an hour, which is I'm not enough.
Mm-hmm. And I think it does that to women in general.
Oh,
well,
yeah.
probably everyone, but women
yeah.
and young girls.
Oh my goodness.
I mean,
Yes.
anxiety and depression are through the roof.
Yes.
And there's studies on that, things I've read about it.
Even
They're
lately.
just like, as soon
Oh,
as
yeah.
girls are just on their phone all the time, and I am certain that they're like, I'm not enough. I can
I
never
so
measure up. I
agree.
can never ever measure up. And that's not from God,
No.
right? So social media is a wonderful tool,
Right.
but we can't believe lies about ourselves. We have
Right.
to believe the truth
That's
of what
good.
God says about us.
That's good.
Social media?
Nope.
Oh, next
Family
question.
issues. Best advice when dealing with family issues. 60 seconds. Go.
Deal with them quickly. Don't sweep things under the rug, and just be kind in the way that you approach them, but deal with them, and don't stop until you get to the place where it's to a place of healthiness, or it's resolved, or you've either made a decision that this is as far as we can go with this. But yeah.
All right.
Best advice when dealing with money. Money spending.
I would say that since we're talking about marriage, I would say that you at least have to have some kind of plan where you come to an agreement on how things are going to roll. We're going to roll. We talked earlier about, we came into marriage very different, with different mindsets about marriage, about money. And I think where we are now is we just have an understanding of what our priorities are, what we're going to do. And for years, she managed our money, and then I took it over, and I think that's made things probably better for us.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, I mean, I think as long as as it relates to money, and we don't have any secrets when it comes to money.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think we're very honest and open about how we spend, what we do. But I would just say there needs to be an openness, but there needs to be an agreement on what your goals are as it relates to money, and how you're going to view money, what you want to save and how you want to spend.
Mm-hmm.
And
Does that look different today than it did in the very first 5 years of your marriage? Like you guys learned and then you adjusted? Or did you get it right off the bat?
And we didn't have a cent the first 5 years of our
Made it
marriage.
easy.
The first
Yeah,
right? When you don't have
years.
money.
I mean, we really didn't. I mean, we were,
didn't.
Right.
we were not just paycheck to paycheck. We were behind. And so, we have probably because of
Watch
some of
God
that.
come through for us.
Yeah. I mean, we've gone into debt a few times. Just because we were in situations that, there were a few times in the early days of Westridge where we went into debt on behalf of the church. People don't really know that. But God has redeemed all of that.
Yeah.
But
Totally.
I think we now, here's the thing. I think when you don't have a lot of money and this is this theme about not being enough or whatever, and Amy would go to the store and she would feel like I spent so much. I spent way too much, and I'd have to go, either I'm going to make her feel like she did or she didn't. And I think me taking the burden off of her of handling the money
Helped.
helped big time, but also just freeing her up as well, to say, take care of our family, do what we got to do. But we also, like, if we're going to make a big purchase, we'll talk about it with each other.
Yeah.
Like, there's no surprises like that.
Okay.
Babe.
Oh, best advice when dealing with stress.
I would say to have fun together. Like, you just have to keep having
that.
fun in your marriage. Some people stop having fun and it becomes all business, and you have to just keep laughing and doing fun stuff together, right?
I like that.
And that alleviates a lot of stress.
That's true.
Everybody has stress in
Right.
their life, but we have to keep having fun and take a day off. Just take a day off to rest and not have a lot of work to do, and just say, taking a day off, it fills you up. And then all the things that seem so stressful, they sometimes don't seem as stressful anymore when you're having fun.
Pastor, you happen to get number 5 here. Best advice when dealing
How
with...
convenient.
Yeah. Want an aviation
How
question,
convenient.
babe?
How convenient.
Best advice when dealing with faith.
When dealing with faith in a marriage or personally?
In a relationship or personally. The relationship, this is a relationship podcast, so that in regards to that then, in regards to a relationship, how does your faith, what's your best advice in that? People go through all kinds of stuff, right? So boom.
Yeah, I would say faith. I mean, faith is a journey. And so I want a journey. I want to go on a faith journey with Amy.
Mm-hmm.
Like we have our own time in the morning where we're, she's in the bedroom, I'm out in the living room. But I want the journey of faith that I'm on to be with her.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think it's good to, when we go out on a date, whatever, we talk about, hey, listen, here's what I'm learning. Or she'll say, hey, I want you to read this. Or, hey, listen to this verse. Or I don't want it to be, it is a separate part of our lives, but it has to be, I want to be in lockstep with her.
Mm-hmm.
And so praying together is a big deal for us. Sharing things, it's like, go back to what we talked about earlier. It's like, I'll read a book. I'm like, you got to read this. And she'll like, not
And
reading
now
that
I'm
book.
like, no.
No. Tell me what the book's about. And so
Give me the bottom line,
Cliff
I'm not
notes.
reading your
Yeah,
book.
it's like
Because every week he has a new book he wants me to read.
I read a great book and I buy 50 of them for our staff. It's like, read this. But again, it's like, I don't, faith, it's a journey, and she pulls me along sometimes and I pull her along sometimes. And that's what we do, because that's what couples do. And when we encourage each other and love to go, hey, let's go, so I want to inspire her to walk with the Lord, and she definitely inspires me. And I think that's, what we do.
That's good. Okay, final question. What is the greatest lesson God has taught you so far as a couple?
And I would say just that God's grace is just so big, and just to live in that, like in your marriage, to live in it, and just to forgive, and don't major on all these minor things. Like, life is short. It's like, I'm watching people, like, life is flying by. I'm like, what matters? What matters? Love, grace, forgiveness, and having fun together, and just going, you know what? I'm not going to let the enemy win. I'm not going to get stuck in dealing with these picky little things. Just like, let it go and have a great time, and just live in God's grace and his fullness, and just love big. Just love big.
We got to use that quote. Don't major on the minor things. That is so the truth. That's great.
You guys have heard the KISS principle? Keep it simple, stupid.
Yep.
And it's
I was just thinking about that when you said, like when you think about what is my stress today, you can list all kinds of stuff.
Right.
But if you say, we got to sleep together last night, we're in a house together right now, we set it at 72 degrees. Hey, where do you want to eat today?
65.
Oh,
'cause of
let's go do
menopause.
this. Like, it's like you're dating again. It's just fun, as you said, the stress-free life. Yeah, you have to deal with that stuff. But look at the smaller, keep it simple stuff.
Yeah.
We're alive. We're hanging out.
we get
I
to
can
set the
look at you.
tone.
Yeah.
My eyes are working.
Yeah.
Right? It makes it just so joyous.
Yeah.
Simple. It's simple.
I would say, if you could begin with the end in mind, like there's a couple that's getting married right now, or young married, I would say just begin with the end in mind. I did this on my little break in our families, blood related. There's 49 people altogether. There's 30 divorces, and I think for Amy and me, it's like, we have said this numerous times, and there's a lot of other things in there that I won't mention, but it's like, we're going to break these cycles. And for us, we want to finish well. And I think part of that, is I want Amy to be all that she can possibly be. Everything that God created her to be, I want her to be those things. And I would say that I don't think early on that was somewhat of my mindset. You know, it's just we were so busy rolling so hard, and now it's like we're going to finish well. And while we're doing this, I want her to be all that she can be in this relationship. And I think she has made that her goal for me for years. And so, you know, and the thing is, and I said this earlier, couples get stale, they get old, you know, they get older, people get bitter, and we're just not going to do that. Like we're going to keep having fun till we're done.
That's awesome.
That's fantastic.
You know, so.
Well, guys, we know you're busy, still rolling, and we so appreciate you coming in and talking with us. And hopefully, you know, we know some of our listeners, young, old, middle, they'll get some good information, good advice from you guys. We appreciate your honesty, your openness.
Yes.
And because, as you know, we're both in the airline industry, we like to just give a little token from faraway lands. So this is just a little something to take home with you. This one's from Copenhagen. So take that home. You have to open it
I
now
wanted the
because we're
package of
going off.
almonds.
Thank
What?
you.
I wanted the package of almonds that you give out on the plane.
Oh,
All these
the smokehouse.
Those are good.
They're very
Not
good.
the biscuit.
No,
the little cookie.
Yeah,
for
they only
You're
get those in
welcome.
business class.
You're welcome. Well, to our listeners, viewers, thank you again for joining our flight today. As we say, it is gear down and